perspective, we see an upward trend with food inflation inching up by 0.8 percentage points between June and July 2023, and non-food inflation increasing by 0.4 percentage points from 33.4 in June 2023 to 33.8 in July 2023.
Also coming up, 8 banks accounted for 67% of banking industry exposure to the Domestic Debt Exchange Program, according to a report by PwC. And as the National Petroleum Authority gears up to implement the cylinder recirculation program next month, Joy Business visits some exchange points and bottling plants to assess their readiness.
Our yearly production will be 1.2 million cylinders if we work double shifts. But at the moment, as you saw, half of the machines, we are not operating them. We are not in our full capacity. We are just waiting for the CRM to kick off so that we can meet the demands.
My name is Daryl. Kwawu. Thanks for being with us. Details coming up. And we begin with the latest inflation figures from the Ghana Statistical Service. The year-on-year inflation shot up marginally to 43.1% in July 2023 from the 42.2% recorded in June. According to figures from the Statistical Service, rising prices of food and non-alcoholic beverages pushed the overall inflation up. Now, speaking at a press briefing, government statistician Professor Samuel Kobnenim said food inflation continues to significantly impact the overall inflation.
Both food and non-food perspective, we see an upward trend with food inflation inching up by 0.8 percentage points between June and July 2023, and non-food inflation increasing by 0.4 percentage points from 33.4 in June 2023 to 33.8 in July 2023. Disaggregating further from a locally produced item and an imported item perspective, we find an 8.2 percentage point difference between inflation for imported items and inflation for locally produced items, with imported items recording an inflation rate of 45.7% and locally produced items 37.5%. Further disaggregating year-on-year inflation from a regional perspective, the Northeast region recorded the highest rate of 64.0%, and the Greater Accra region recorded the lowest rate of 31.8%, indicating about a 2-time difference between these two regions, that is the Northeast region and the Greater Accra region. On a month-on-month basis, we saw that month-on-month inflation inched up by 0.4 percentage points, 3.2 for June 2023 and 3.6 for July 2023. Disaggregating this from a food and non-food perspective, Food inflation on a month-on-month basis was 3.8%, and non-food inflation on a month-on-month basis was 3.4%.
All right, joining us on Zoom, Associate Professor of Finance at the Andrews University in the U.S., Williams Repart. Thank you so much for your time. So your reaction to the latest numbers as prices of food continue to trigger an increase in inflation?
Good afternoon, Daryl. So what is really happening, we may know that we are not out of the inflationary pressures yet. Cost of inputs from the world market is going up. We've also noticed that our currency has not finally come to its realization or stabilization. We see a small increase in currency devaluations. And also, we noticed that when the fuel price reduced at the world market, there was not much reduction in the fuel cost, which also kept the transport sector also very a little bit high. And in fact, the farmers in Ghana, if you've noticed, they are also feeling the pinch of the high cost of living. So they are also reflecting, they are also letting their prices reflect and that high cost of living. So we also notice an increase in electricity costs, which also have an impact in the general economy. So these factors put together are the reasons why we've seen a marginal increase in the inflationary rate at the moment. So from the food side, there's also the talk that there might be a shortage of rice because of the policies by India. So these are also going to have an impact on the rice importation. And remember, in Ghana, we currently now consume a lot of rice. So putting all these together, that's why we've seen that our food basket keeps on being the leader for inflation as compared to the non-food items.
I mean, it's interesting to point out because last month, for instance, we saw an increase in the price of dog meat, in the price of fish, and so it makes you wonder really where the increase is coming from. For instance, for dog meat, it makes you wonder what is really happening. I mean, you cite things like rice, which you understand there's a global issue going on, but then locally, some of these items don't really make sense.
So locally, because we are mostly importing most of the food items we consume, that is one major factor. So like for dog meat, for instance, we don't produce them in Ghana. It's an imported item. So aside the exchange rate devaluation, there's also increase in taxes. All this will cause the cost of the product being going high. And also from the farmer's perspective, we also seen that there is also an increase in the farm inputs. So definitely they will also factor in the prices of the items that they produce in Ghana. So that is why we've seen that kind of mix in Ghana. And then there's also that kind of, you see that production output itself is not as significant as in the past. Some part of the land, because of the issue of galamsey, you may also see that there are the ripple effects that we are currently facing. And also, as expected, we are not seeing a lot of the youth also going into agriculture, which is also affecting production. So there's a slight shortage, and people are also reflecting their cost of living into the product that they are selling. That's why we're seeing the prices going up.
Yeah, because I was going to say, because you mentioned people are factoring the cost of living as well, whether it could also be the situation that people are exploiting the economic situation to make some gains.
I mean, it may be true. We may have to find out from the Ghana Statistical Service what is the prices they are getting from the farm gates as compared to the urban centers. If the price disparities are too wide, then it means that the middlemen are really profiting from it. Remember, the government action they took some time past trying to move the product from the farm gates to Accra to the ministry to sell. Can we find out whether that is the real situation? If not, the middlemen may be profiting from the entire transaction. And until government comes in with some staff measures or policies to address that kind of issue.
So far, we have not seen any pragmatic measures to curtail food inflation. At least I've not heard of any. What should the government be doing? Are they approaching this wrongly?
I don't know what is happening to the slogan that government started when the operation, I think, getting the youth to go into agriculture and
planting for food and jobs?
Food and jobs. So and that kind of policy, we should strengthen that kind of policy, and it may bring down the whole issue. In my perspective, I think we spend a lot of money building about 1,000 warehouses, hoping that we are going to produce more and store them at the moment, but we cannot talk of that kind of much storage of food products in the 100,000 warehouses that were built. So these are some of the policies. We want to see government maybe going down to the market gates, buying them and storing them. And at this time, we're releasing them onto the market so that we see that the prices come down. Because there are some commodities probably which we can produce, buy them and store them in the warehouses, and then sell them when it's needed. Some products too, especially tomatoes, onions, and the rest, the government may have to find a strategy to make sure that we try to cultivate them and then produce them ourselves instead of going to Burkina Faso and the rest because they all increase the inflationary pressures, because we go as far as Burkina and Niger. And we should also not remember, we should remember that Niger is also closing its borders. So the anticipation is that onions are going to be very expensive very soon, because we get a lot of our onions from Niger, and there are some kind of meat also that we get from Niger. They call it kotubi. It's also going to affect the food basket in the coming year. So all these factors are something that we need to find out what the policies of government should be. Probably encourage the youth to go into agriculture and those programs. If not, the situation will get very bad.
And based on what you're saying, especially with the situation in Niger, it looks as though we are going to see inflation continue to rise, at least in the next couple of months. I don't know what you think about that. And what are the implications for economic recovery if this trend continues?
I mean, World Bank issued a report that we should anticipate this. And also in our IMF document, it's already mentioned that the situation will get very worse before it will get better. So all these issues are going to be at play. Noticing that rice is also going to be in shortage because of the Indian policy. The Indian controls about 40% of the rice production and are sent to some part of Europe and Africa. So food prices or inflation is going to go up because of shortages. So as for that belief, I believe that is going to get worse. What I may say is that maybe the rate of increase will not be as it happened in November, December last year. Maybe the rate of increase may be marginal, as we noticed between the previous month, June and July, something like that. But it's not going to be that kind of sharp. So if the government is able to address some policies, comes up with strategies to address the prices of the farm grade versus the urban market, then that kind of issue can be curtailed. But we should anticipate that inflation will get worse before it starts to come down.
Thank you so much for your time. Professor Williams Bipra, Associate Professor of Finance at the Andrews University in the U.S. Thank you for your analysis. Well, let's turn to issues concerning the domestic debt exchange program and our banking industry. 8 banks accounted for 67% of banking industry exposure to the domestic debt exchange program. This confirms a Joy Business story in November last year that 8 banks were highly exposed to the government of Ghana bonds. Now, according to the 2023 Ghana Banking Survey by Accounting Professionals, PwC, 72% of the impairment charges recorded in 2022 were linked to these banks. There's more in this report.
GCB, Consolidated Bank Ghana, EcoBank Ghana, and ABSA recorded the highest impairment charges of 1.81 billion, 1.77 billion, 1.62 billion, and 1.61 billion cedis respectively. The banks most impacted by impairment charge as a proportion of their investment securities portfolio were Cal Bank, Prudential Bank, Zenith Bank, and First National Bank. With the terms for the restructure of dollar-denominated securities yet to be finalized, the report said it will be interesting to assess the adequacy of the credit losses estimated by banks once the terms are finalized for exchange. The domestic debt exchange program, coupled with the downgrade of the government of Ghana's credit rating by rating agencies, swung the industry into an unprecedented loss. This resulted in the erosion of the industry's asset base by 15.7 billion cedis through the recognition of impairment charges on government securities.
Now, the National Petroleum Authority says it is deepening stakeholder consultation before the cylinder recirculation model takes off next month. According to Deputy Chief Executive of the MPA, Perry Okujeto, the authority is open for more dialogue with LPG marketers. James Ishen visited one of the bottling plants and exchange points here in Accra to assess their readiness for the program.
The formulation of the cylinder recirculation model is warranted to curtail the frequent gas explosions that recurrently hit the country and also solve the stress consumers go through in filling their cylinders. After a successful implementation of the policy, it is estimated that over 9,000 direct jobs will be created in relation to new jobs. The implementation of the CRM is to ensure that at least 50% of Ghanaians have access to safe, clean and environmentally friendly LPG by 2030. It is also meant to improve access to LPG and to increase adoption of LPG. Additionally, it is a policy shift to stop unnecessary loss of lives and properties, as well as gas filling stations, mostly due to human error.
Systems side by side. And then as the new policy takes new territory, the old policy sort of shuts down gradually. And then for a particular timeline that we will set for ourselves, will then finally phase out the old system. So yes, currently our monthly consumption of LPG is about 30,000 metric tons. If you put that into the math, 80,000, if our bottling plants are able to produce 80,000 cylinders per day, if you calculate that per the current demand, we need to feed the system about 50,000 cylinders a day. So the capacity is enough, and we think that at full implementation, this is just the beginning. Like we said earlier, we've issued 8 licenses. We have 4 bottling plants that have currently been constructed. We're looking to have more bottling plants come up, and the capacity is going to increase.
Perry Okujeto explained that the model had been well piloted, the system had been streamlined, the infrastructure now in place to ensure the safe delivery and use of LPG across the operational areas.
Because the cylinders have been an investment by a bottling plant, we need to know at every point in time who has it. So it's a simple registration process. You go to an exchange point, you identify yourself, they take your details, and you must have a valid, when you go to a bank to cash a check, you present a Ghana card. If you go to an exchange point, you present a Ghana card. The Ghana card has all your details, has your location, where you live and all of that on it. So that we can have, or the exchange point can have data, and there can be traceability in case the cylinder goes and for 1 year, it doesn't come back. So that is for the registration. And like I said, without, well, apart from Ghana card, if there's another form of identification that gives the exchange point operator comfort. And you know, the exchange points we have are not going to be too different from what we currently have. What will be different is that they are not going to fill the cylinder on site. The cylinders will be delivered from a bottling plant. That is the only thing that is going to change. So usually you will notice that exchange points have a relationship with the community, or outlets have a relationship with the community. I believe the only way you carry your cylinder to Jolo to fill is if you don't have LPG in a local LPG station in your area. So definitely you know each other, they know where you live and all of that. It is a matter of making sure that they keep a record of who has the cylinder at every point in time. And like I said, the subsequent public education and messages that we will craft for your networks will further explain these processes so that citizens can be abreast with how we want to implement this.
On a visit to one of the bottling plants and exchange points, I engaged Sigma Cylinders on their preparedness prior to the implementation of the CRM. Carlos Itonian is the managing director.
We manufacture the LPG cylinder in 4 different sizes: 3 kg, 6 kg, 12.5 kg and 15 kg cylinders. We have been in Ghana for 25 years. The company is fully owned Ghanaian company. We have been providing cylinder manufacturing service for almost 25 years in Ghana.
Right, so right behind me, I could see quite a lot going on. I actually don't have the technical expertise with respect to what's happening there. Talk to me, what's basically happening here?
As you can see, the factory is newly renovated, and we have brought new machines. We work in 4 different countries, in Abidjan, in Iraq, in Lebanon, and in Ghana. We have initiated from Ghana. We are manufacturing the cylinders. If you want, we will go through to the process of manufacturing cylinder. All the process of manufacturing cylinder is done here in our facility in North Industrial Area. And all our workers are Ghanaians. We have more than 100 workers at the moment. And we follow all the safety measures that are put by GSA and MPA.
All right, you're watching The Marketplace. Time to talk tech. Zoom, the video communications company whose name became synonymous with remote work during the pandemic, has ordered staff back to the office. The firm said it believed a structured hybrid approach was most effective, and people living within 50 miles of an office should work in person at least twice a week. It is the latest push by major firms to roll back a flexible working policy. Surveys suggest that workers are still holding on to the ability to work from home to some degree. In studio to discuss this is my colleague Isaac Atasenyako. Good to have you in studio to talk tech now.
Great.
So question really is, are the days of remote work coming to an end?
Well, Daryl, that's an interesting question, especially when Zoom, one of the leading, tech companies, which fronted working from home.
The irony of it.
is now asking, a chunk of their workers to, come back to work or, sit in the office space. Now, the thing is, a lot of people are saying that now, if Zoom is asking workers to come back to work, then it could be that the days of remote work is gradually coming to an end or has ended. However, it takes more, or there is more to remote work. Mm-hmm. Now, research has shown that remote work increases or, is able to influence productivity. And so there is that bit of the conversation as well. But we also see that when it comes to remote work, now, though some companies are asking workers to move back to the offices, there is some other companies or some other industries that are also promoting remote work, especially the creatives. Now, a lot of people are now asking, creative people doing, designing, graphics and all of that, video editing, or creating the space for them in the remote work industry. And so for them, it's not much of a big deal because they can stay anywhere, work from home, and still deliver what they are being asked to do.
If it increases productivity, then why do employers have a problem now with people staying out of the office and doing the work they're supposed to do anyway and producing results?
Well, for the employers, I think the issue here is that it sort of promotes inclusivity when you are in the office. Knowledge sharing is also one of the things that's very important. You being with colleagues, you sharing knowledge, and it's that easy for bosses. Now, let's make this point here. Bosses are calling for this, not necessarily, workers. Let me put it that way. Now, bosses, because they believe that, or they think that they should have that control over workers. They should be able to see workers in the office space, go about, or see them do the work they are supposed to be doing. However, like I was saying earlier, that remote work has the ability to increase productivity. Because now when people are working from home, a chunk of their time is spent on the road, especially here in Ghana. A greater part of the time we spend when we leave the home is on our road, en route to work and from home.
Exactly.
Now this decreases productivity because a lot of the time you get to work tired. Now if I'm working from home, it offers me that flexibility. Wake up at any time and still will be able to deliver. I don't have to put on a suit and tie if I have to. I can easily wear anything. And that sort of flexibility, having kids at home, taking a break in between time intermittently, is what is or has increased productivity because that has offered that, refreshing space, if I can put it that way, or some form of, a change in environment to workers for them to be able to deliver on their
and so that makes the case for working remotely, doesn't it? Well, the trend we are seeing right now is that most multinationals are asking workers to come back at least maybe twice a week or 3 times a week. I don't know. But then what are the pros and cons for employees?
Well, for employers, I mean, again, the flexibility. For employees, let me begin with employees, the flexibility. So now for employees, the fact that you don't have to think about commuting to work and from work, going through that hassle, you deciding on what to wear to work, but you being able to live within your comfort, within your space, however you want to sit and work, whatever you want to do to, deliver on your duties, that is one of the things pushing for employees or to be able to, push for this remote work thing. For employers, I mean...
15 seconds.
For employers, clearly now, as it stands, they don't really, I won't say they don't care about productivity, but they want to see workers in their space. They want to see workers in their offices. But then again, for employers, it also has come at a cost reduction since working in the office spaces can be costly sometimes. So we look at even companies here in Ghana who have had to ask employees to do some hybrid, partly work at home, partly work in the office because they're able to cut down cost when, these workers work from home.
We've got to go. Thank you so much, Isaac Atase. We'll continue this debate in the office. That's the marketplace. Thanks for watching, everyone. More news on our website, myjoyonline.com/business. You can read more about our top story today on inflation increasing marginally to 43.1% in July, myjoyonline.com/business. We're back same time tomorrow.